Paul Newman once revealed the 8 beautiful women of all time. Those blue eyes saw everything. For decades, Paul Newman stood as Hollywood's gold standard of masculine beauty. But it was his assessment of beauty and others that revealed the depth behind those legendary eyes. Newman understood women in a way most men simply don't, revealed a longtime friend who knew him for over 40 years. He didn't just see surface beauty. He saw character, intelligence, the unique qualities that made certain women truly unforgettable. In his later years, after decades of marriage to Joanne Woodward and a career that placed him alongside the most stunning women in film history, Newman occasionally shared private insights about beauty that went far beyond typical Hollywood assessments. Paul was known for his famous quote about fidelity. "Why go out for hamburger when you have steak at home?" Explained a director who worked with Newman on multiple films. But that didn't mean he was blind to beauty around him. He just appreciated it differently than most men in Hollywood. Tonight, we reveal Paul Newman's personal list of the 8 most beautiful women of all time. Not just their stunning physical attributes, but the unique qualities that this legendary actor observed in each that elevated them from merely attractive to genuinely unforgettable. Joanne Woodward, the beauty that kept him home. Newman's assessment of the most beautiful women in the world always began and ended with the same name, Joanne Woodward, his wife of 50 years. While Hollywood marriages typically dissolve faster than film in developing solution, Newman and Woodward's relationship stood as the rare exception in an industry built on transient connections. His number one always confirmed a family friend who knew the couple for decades. Paul would talk about other beautiful women in that abstract way artists discuss aesthetics. But when he spoke about Joanne, something in his voice changed. It became more intimate, more reverent. Newman famously explained his lifelong fidelity with the now legendary quip, "Why go out for a hamburger when you have steak at home?" But those close to the couple understood that this shorthand explanation barely scratched the surface of what Newman saw in Woodward. Her beauty wasn't loud. It was permanent, Newman once told a journalist during a rare moment of personal candor. Joanne had this quality that revealed itself gradually. The first time you met her, you'd think, yes, she's very attractive. The 10th time, you'd realize you were in the presence of someone extraordinary. Unlike the more obvious bombshell beauty of some of his co-stars, Woodward possessed what Newman described as intelligent beauty, a combination of physical attractiveness, sharp wit, and artistic integrity that created something far more compelling than mere prettiness. Paul appreciated that Joanne was beautiful without being defined by her beauty, explained a director who worked with both actors. She was an Oscar winner before he was, a serious actress who approached her craft with extraordinary intelligence. That combination of talent and beauty created something that Paul found endlessly fascinating. Their marriage wasn't without challenges. Newman's drinking created tensions at certain periods, and the death of their son Scott from drug overdose in 1978 tested the relationship in ways nothing else could. But through it all, Newman's appreciation for his wife's beauty, both physical and spiritual, never diminished. Even in their 70s, you'd catch Paul looking at Joanne across a room with this expression of absolute wonder, remembered a friend who knew them in their later years. It wasn't nostalgia for how she looked when they were young. It was appreciation for who she was at every age. That's remarkably rare, especially in Hollywood. For Newman, Woodward represented beauty that evolved rather than faded. A partner whose attractiveness deepened with shared experience, intellectual growth, and the inevitable marks of time. In an industry obsessed with youth and preservation, Newman's enduring appreciation for his wife offered a different understanding of what makes a woman truly beautiful. As we leave behind the personal connection that defined Newman's life, we turn to a very different kind of beauty, one that embodied a nearly untouchable elegance that eventually ascended to actual royalty. But of course, once my children were born here, I began to feel at home. And now this is where my Grace Kelly, Silence in a Loud Room. When Paul Newman worked with Grace Kelly in 1958 on The Left-Handed Gun, he encountered a woman on the verge of a transformation that would remove her from Hollywood forever. Having recently married Prince Rainier III of Monaco, Kelly was completing her final film obligations before retiring from acting to assume her duties as Princess of Monaco. He called her the kind of woman you can't forget 5 minutes after meeting, recalled a crew member who worked on that production. There was something about Grace that seemed to exist in a different register than everyone else on set. While film is typically chaotic, loud, and frantic, she moved through it all with this remarkable composure that made everyone else seem slightly out of control by comparison. Newman's appreciation for Kelly went beyond her obvious physical beauty to focus on the extraordinary self-possession that set her apart from other actresses of the era. While many beautiful women in Hollywood worked to command attention, Kelly exuded a quiet confidence that drew focus without apparent effort. She looked like silence in a loud room, Newman reportedly observed to a friend after working with her. Grace didn't need to raise her voice or make dramatic entrances. She simply existed with such perfect clarity that everything around her seemed slightly disordered by comparison. This quality of composed elegance wasn't an act for Kelly, but a genuine expression of her character. Raised in a wealthy Philadelphia family with strong values around propriety and social conduct, she brought to Hollywood a refinement that seemed almost from another era and ultimately led her to a life that suited those qualities perfectly. Newman once said that Grace Kelly was the only actress he knew who seemed more natural as a princess than as a movie star, shared a film historian. He meant it as high praise that her inherent dignity and elegance were so genuine that assuming royal duties seemed like a natural evolution rather than an imposed role. What particularly impressed Newman about Kelly was how her beauty operated independently of her surroundings. While many actresses were greatly enhanced by Hollywood lighting, makeup, and cinematography, Kelly's appearance remained remarkably consistent regardless of context. Elegant, cool, regal. Even before she became a princess, noted someone who worked with her during her Hollywood years. Most beautiful women are at their best in controlled environments with perfect lighting. Grace looked exactly the same walking through the commissary at lunchtime as she did on camera. The kind of beauty that doesn't require context or enhancement is extraordinarily rare. For Newman, Kelly represented a particular kind of American paradox. A woman who embodied democratic values while possessing an inherent nobility that made her transition to European royalty seem almost inevitable. Her beauty wasn't just in her features, but in the remarkable consistency between her outer appearance and inner character. While Kelly embodied cool elegance, our next subject represented something entirely different. A passionate intensity that Newman found equally compelling, but for very different reasons. Marital togetherness. I think, especially if you have no room. Elizabeth Taylor, the woman who detonated rooms. If Grace Kelly represented composed elegance, Elizabeth Taylor embodied passionate intensity. Newman encountered Taylor multiple times throughout their careers, though they never co-starred in a film together. What struck him about her wasn't just her legendary beauty, but the volcanic energy that seemed to radiate from her. Newman admired her intensity and her violet eyes, recalled a producer who worked with both stars during the 1960s. While many beautiful women in Hollywood seemed to cultivate an air of untouchable perfection, Elizabeth was all passion and presence. She owned her beauty in a way that was almost challenging, daring you to look away when you knew you couldn't. Taylor's beauty was famously enhanced by her unique violet eyes, a genetic rarity that gave her gaze a hypnotic quality unlike any other actress of her generation. But Newman recognized that her appeal went far beyond this distinctive feature to encompass her entire approach to life, one marked by emotional intensity, courage in the face of health challenges, and an unapologetic approach to her own desires. She didn't enter the room, she detonated it. Newman reportedly commented after attending an industry event where Taylor was present. There are beautiful women who want to be admired from a distance. Elizabeth wanted to be experienced up close to make everyone in her vicinity feel something, whether that was attraction, intimidation, or envy. This quality made Taylor a uniquely powerful presence in Hollywood, where many beautiful women of her era were carefully managed by studios to maintain an image of pristine perfection. Taylor lived openly, with all her complications and contradictions on full display. Her multiple marriages, health struggles, weight fluctuations, and passionate causes, all part of a life lived without filters. Called her volcanic, beautiful in a way that burned, remembered a mutual friend. Paul had tremendous respect for how Elizabeth never hid the challenging parts of her life. While other stars of their generation went to great lengths to conceal problems or vulnerabilities, she faced everything publicly with remarkable courage. He found that authenticity extremely beautiful. Taylor's willingness to age publicly rather than disappearing from view when she no longer matched Hollywood's youthful ideal particularly impressed Newman. In an industry that often discarded women once they passed a certain age, Taylor continued to command attention and respect through every phase of her life. Newman once said Elizabeth was the only star he knew who seemed to actually enjoy growing older. Shared a director who worked with both actors. She didn't fight age with desperation like so many in Hollywood. She simply incorporated each life phase into her evolving identity. That kind of self-acceptance struck Paul as a particularly beautiful quality in an industry built on illusion and preservation. For Newman, Taylor represented beauty with courage behind it. A woman whose physical attributes were extraordinary, but whose willingness to live authentically made her truly memorable. In an era when most beautiful women were carefully controlled products of the studio system, Taylor's refusal to be managed made her something far more fascinating. From Taylor's American intensity, we turn to international glamour. The Italian actress whose combination of earthy sensuality and sophisticated intelligence created a beauty that transcended boundaries. My autobiography, and this did go on the air about him, Sophia Loren, the woman who made men irrelevant. Newman worked with Sophia Loren in 1967's Lady L, experiencing firsthand the extraordinary presence of the Italian actress who had conquered Hollywood without ever fully becoming part of it. What struck him about Loren wasn't just her obvious physical beauty, but the remarkable self-possession she brought with her. He once said she had the kind of face that makes you forget your name, recalled a crew member who worked on the production. Sophia wasn't just physically beautiful, though she certainly was that. She had this extraordinary confidence, this absolute comfort in her own skin that made her beauty seem like simply one aspect of a completely integrated person rather than her defining quality. Unlike many international actresses who attempted to downplay their origins to better fit into American film, Loren proudly maintained her Italian identity, her accent, her curvaceous figure that defied Hollywood's typically thin ideal, and her passionate approach to both work and life all proudly on display. Her mix of strength and sensuality made a lasting impression, noted a director who worked with both stars. Sophia represented a different ideal than the typical American beauty of that era. She was unapologetically womanly, intellectually sharp, and completely uninterested in making herself smaller or less noticeable to accommodate anyone's discomfort with her power. This refusal to diminish herself particularly impressed Newman, who observed how Loren moved through Hollywood with a confidence that many American actresses struggled to maintain in an industry that constantly evaluated and criticized women's appearances. Every man in the room was irrelevant when she walked in, Newman reportedly commented after attending a premiere where Loren was present. What made Sophia extraordinary wasn't just how she looked. It was that she never seemed to need anyone's approval for how she looked. She carried herself with this absolute certainty that she was enough exactly as she was. Loren's beauty was enhanced by her willingness to use her face expressively in performances. Unlike many beautiful actresses who carefully maintained composed expressions to protect their image, she laughed broadly, cried convincingly, and created characters with emotional depth rather than simply presenting a perfect facade. Newman admired that she was an actress first and a beauty second, explained someone familiar with both of their careers. While many gorgeous women in film seemed afraid to appear less than perfect on screen, Sophia would take roles that required her to look disheveled, aged, or distraught if the character demanded it. That artistic integrity made her beauty more authentic because it wasn't something she felt she needed to protect at all costs. For Newman, Lauren embodied a particularly European understanding of feminine beauty, one that embraced maturity, intellectual depth, and natural physical attributes rather than pursuing the youthful, often surgically enhanced ideal that would later come to dominate Hollywood. Her comfort with herself created a beauty that seemed to grow rather than diminish with time. From Lauren's sophisticated sensuality, we turn to a very different type of beauty. The French actress who brought a revolutionary natural quality to screen beauty that changed cinema forever. How do you pronounce your name? Rit Bardot. Brigitte Bardot. And when were you born? A 28th of September. Brigitte Bardot, the hypnotic rule breaker. Though Newman never worked directly with Brigitte Bardot, like most of the world, he was struck by the French actress's singular impact on definitions of beauty in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Bardot represented something entirely new, a natural, seemingly untamed beauty that broke dramatically from the carefully constructed glamour that had dominated cinema. Newman said Bardot had that raw, undone look like the rules didn't apply to her, recalled a friend who discussed cinema with Newman frequently. What made her so revolutionary wasn't just her obvious physical attributes, but how she presented them with this casual disregard for the careful poise and perfect styling that had defined female stars before her. Where previous screen beauties were products of meticulous studio management, every hair in place, makeup precisely applied, movements carefully choreographed, Bardot introduced a tousled, spontaneous quality that suggested a woman living for her own pleasure rather than for audience approval. She wasn't polished, she was hypnotic, Newman reportedly observed after watching In God Created Woman, the film that made Bardot an international sensation. Most beautiful women in film seemed to be asking for the audience's admiration. Bardot seemed completely uninterested in approval. She moved like someone who was entirely inside her own experience rather than performing it for others.